So good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. on August 10th, and I'll call the meeting of the Town Council to order. If we could please take a moment of silence to acknowledge all of those that do and have served, enabling us voting privileges, our freedom and safety. Thank you, everyone. In accordance with Mass General Law, tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. I would ask if anyone in our audience is recording, could you please identify yourselves?
I don't see anybody, Mike.
Thank you. This meeting is being held virtually through a Zoom webinar pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Okay. Jeannie, I know that we do have someone signed up, I believe Russ Dupre, for public comments. And Don, do you see him in the audience by any chance?
I do. Just give me 1 second.
Absolutely.
Okay, he's on his way in.
Okay. Hi, Russ.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate your time. And I would just ask, for the record, if you could state your name and address, please.
Sure. Russell Dupre, 134 Ashford Road in Longmeadow.
Okay. What's come before us this evening is a request by numerous residents to see if they could get support from our council with Senate Bill number 584. Could you help us out and give us a brief explanation on if anything's changed since the last time you were able to join us?
Sure. So the update is basically that we've been working with a number of different politicians throughout Western Mass and Central Mass. And by the way, in Central Mass, it looks like there may be another quarry that has the same issue because there's been houses that tested positive in Rutland, I think it is, and Holden and Charlton. So it's further out than we thought originally, it appears.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, the politicians have submitted a bill that's pending, and it's currently before the Joint Committee on Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture. And I'll just give you the highlights of what's in the bill. One is to create or enable a captive insurance company. So down in Connecticut, what they've done with this particular issue is they created this captive insurance company because you need an entity to basically hold the funds to help support homeowners that have the crumbling concrete problem. So right now in Massachusetts, we don't have that type of entity created. So this bill would create the insurance company, basically a public insurance company that would cover these type of claims. The second thing is there's a provision that would standardize property tax abatements. That's already also kind of happened in Connecticut. The Council of Regional Governments down there created a standard. I know Longmeadow basically used it because I gave it to them way back when I first had the issue. It would eliminate permitting fees for people that are replacing their foundations. That happened for me in Longmeadow as well. So when I replaced my foundation, they reimbursed all the permit fees. And the last thing is that there'd be a seller disclosure requirement, basically notifying individuals that may be buying a house that there's a potential that houses in this time frame may have crumbling concrete, or at least to think about, whether you want to get it tested. So those are kind of the four major provisions. Typical of any bill is kind of a long, rambling document, which I think all of you received a copy of. Am I correct about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So really what we're doing is we're asking all of the towns that are affected by the particular issue, we're asking the elected officials, either city councils or board of selectmen, to send a letter to that joint committee. And I actually just sent a copy to Marilyn Richards, only because I have her email address. I don't have everybody's, from Wales. So the Wales Board of Selectmen already sent in a letter that basically just simply supported the bill and said, we have homeowners in our town that have this issue and please support the bill, basically. Munson did the same. Charlton, they're meeting tonight on this issue. And I believe Brimfield is meeting sometime next week. And I'm going to contact, I spoke with a former Board of Select member in Longmeadow last week. I'm going to contact them as well and try to get them to send a letter. But basically, the request is simply that we get a letter from the elected officials to the joint committee. We want to show them that, you know, it does affect a lot of towns, that the elected officials in those towns are also concerned about it, as well as the residents. And many of us residents have already sent letters to the joint committee and emails, but we think it might really be helpful to have the elected bodies doing it as well, the people that represent the town as a whole.
Okay, well, we have the document, and we appreciate your time coming in this evening. Marilyn, I don't know if you have anything else you'd want to add, or if you would like to make a motion to support the Senate bill number 584.
Absolutely. I had a conversation, how this got started. I had a conversation with a couple in East Long Meadow who have a crumbling foundation issue with their relatively new home. And it was pretty sobering knowing how unfortunate they were and how lucky I am, because my home was built during the same time frame. My builder just used a different quarry. And so we know that East Long Meadow has at least 12 houses that have documented crumbling foundations, because these homes are receiving abatements from our community. And we know there are many more, and it's a problem of denial, perhaps, you know, just waiting to see what happens. People know that they have it, but they just haven't come forward. So I think as a community, I would be happy to make the motion that we endorse or support, send a letter of support to the appropriate committee, and I have a copy of that letter regarding Senate Bill number 548.
I'll second
Is
that.
it 584, Marilyn?
548.
Okay, my paperwork shows 584.
That's an error. I'm looking at the exact bill and it says number 548.
Okay, I just want to make sure we have that right. So the motion is pertaining to 548. And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so a motion and a second. And any further discussion?
And Mike,
Yes, Ralph.
so I'd just like to add, I took the opportunity to read the whole bill, and I like the way the bill was written, where it's not forcing people to go out and have their foundation tested. It's forcing them to notify any purchaser that there may be an issue and that they may want to have it tested before they purchase. So I thought that was a great difference in it, and I am 100% in support of this.
Yeah, it certainly adds a whole nother element of protection for a buyer. So I couldn't agree more. Any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll roll call vote, and we'll start right up in the left-hand corner of my screen. Ralph?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Tom?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
And Connor?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Russ.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Very well.
Did I tell you one more thing? There's a forum in Munson on August 28th, Saturday at 10 a.m., Granite Valley School, 21 Thompson Street. So any of your residents or any of you that might want to attend, there's going to be a number of politicians there. There's going to be some experts talking about the topic. So we expect there's going to be a pretty good turnout, but I know East Long Meadow is really affected, so that forum might be useful for some of your residents.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for having me.
Council comments. Ralph?
So I would just like to give a great big thank you to the DPW. I don't know if people have realized or not, but they have hired a company to do the line striping throughout the town. And it has made a huge difference, especially right here on Pease Road. It makes traveling a little bit safer up and down the hill. The lines are brighter, and like I said, I know a lot of people complain, and it's just one of the little things that they've done that really makes a difference, and greatly appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Ralph. Mary, do you have a report for us this evening? When you come off of mute.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a report. Thank you, President Kane. As you've read, I trust in my report, there's been a considerable amount of time and effort spent trying to reposition our Veteran Service Office in town. There was a good deal of confusion, I think, about where the responsibility lied and whether or not the Veteran Service Officer was a town employee and so on and so forth. And it's not. There's a Veterans District, which is called the Eastern Hampden Veterans District. And we recently hired Michelle Barrett to be our new Veteran Service Officer. And we interviewed 3 people in the last week of July. Michelle was chosen from the 3, and she's been working with John Comerford somewhat informally out of the Hampden Senior Center over the last several months. She will have office hours in East Long Meadow on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 2. She'll be in Hampden on Tuesday, and I think she'll try to spend some time in Wales on Fridays. But we were in the process of setting her up in the office over in the senior center, getting her paycheck established and her payroll information. The Hampden Town Treasurer is going to assume responsibility for that. These were things that had been taken care of by the Munson Town Treasurer in the past, but since Munson withdrew from the district, those duties had to be assumed elsewhere. Munson's withdrawal also caused our district to essentially fail to exist. So we have correspondence out to the state Department of Veterans Affairs seeking to reestablish a district of which East Long Meadow, Hampden, and Wales will be the 3 members. We think that they will approve that, and then we'll work on a budget. And that's why I reference in the first part of my report that some of the details about Michelle's status or email and so forth are just not worked out yet, because I wanted to make sure that she was going to be on someone's payroll before we started to impose duties on her. But she's a very lovely individual, very dedicated to Veterans Affairs. She is herself a disabled veteran. And I think once you all get to meet her, you will appreciate her devotion and determination to make this a very good office for East Long Meadow's residents. The other board that your town manager has to sit and be involved with, not has to, but is the Westcom Board of Directors. And we met last Friday. The big project there is the renovation of the 645 Schwinnigan Drive building, the former Gold Club, which is the new site of the Westcom Response Center. And the architect gave a very complex and thorough presentation of the conceptual designs and the costs of same. The big blow was that those costs are 5 or 6 million higher than what the district had estimated, but there are a number of grant sources available, and the executive director of Westcom, Aaron Hastings, is pursuing all of those. Ultimately, that building will house 27 stations for dispatch. We brought Ware into the group. Negotiations are pending still with Southwick. Agawam has expressed an interest. So it's growing, and the state continues to support the growth and support it not just with words, but with funding sources. So I think we're in pretty good shape there. I did note in my report that some of the dispatchers were at the National Night Out last Tuesday, and they went out of their way to let me know how much they appreciate working with the personnel in East Long Meadow. They said our fire service and police personnel are really good to work with, very cooperative and helpful. So they're happy to be servicing us, and I'm pleased that Westcom is working as well as it is to date. Operationally speaking, we're great. They're hiring consistently. They have had some turnover, but they're constantly training the dispatch personnel. Right now, I think there are 6 vacancies for dispatchers, but once they fill those slots, then the supervisors will not have to take calls anymore, but they'll be just actually doing supervision and let the frontline personnel take the calls. So good things to report there. Our own labor union negotiations continue. The 2 arms, if you will, of the former town employees union are still in negotiations. The municipal workers, and then the other group is called professional group. I have submitted a contract document to the administrative side, and we're waiting for their response back. So hopefully that'll be forthcoming soon. On police, we have a meeting scheduled at the end of the month to follow up our negotiations there. The other thing that I've been busy with is the individual performance evaluations of the department heads. And I have to say, it's a very rewarding experience for me to spend an hour or an hour and a half with each of those individuals and hear their goals, how they view their challenges, what they think they can do to make their department's operation better, and how I can try to help them from my office to achieve those goals. So, you know, sometimes you hear review and you go, oh, I don't want to do that, and I don't want to sit through that. But I think we're making it a productive exercise and one that is mutually beneficial. So I'm trusting that the department heads are getting the support they need. I do reference in my report 2 things that have come to light. One pertains to Jeannie's office, and the other is Bethany in planning. Our record keeping really needs to be upgraded, cataloged, stored more efficiently. The clerk's office, obviously, as you all know, has a requirement under state law to retain certain records on a schedule. Some have to be retained forever. And the recent climate rainfall from July has severely damaged some of the records from the town hall basement. I haven't had the courage to go down there myself yet, but I've been invited several times and I've respectfully declined so far. But I know that we have a shortage issue, a space storage shortage issue, and I'm determined to assist both the clerk and the planning director in getting that resolved. I mention those things because Steve is going to later tell you about a fairly significant amount of turnbacks from departments. And I'm tying this all together because those turnbacks that he's going to itemize, if you have questions about them, are really the result of the hard work that the departments have put forth this year. Not just the department heads, obviously, but the staffs as well. But they're working under some very difficult conditions. I know Bethany Yao told me, for example, that when she has to go research a planning document, they're stored in 5 or 6 different places, some in the attic of the town hall, some in the basement, some in her little planning office, some in the DPW cabinets. And just the time that it takes to go find a document, it's not wasted time because it has to be done, but it's really inefficient use of time. And those are the types of things that I know we can do better. And I know the departments would like to do them better. So it's one of our mutual goals for next year to try very hard to find the money, whether it comes from free cash at a later date or some other source, because we really need to fix that problem. The staff in town deserves it. One other thing that was really significant is the DPW invited me to the basement of the Council on Aging building. So getting a lot of invitations to the cellar of our town facilities, but I accepted that one. The boiler in the Council on Aging building is it's about 40 years old. It's extremely inefficient in terms of energy efficiency. It is failing. We've spent $28,000 or $30,000 in the last several years replacing certain parts of it. And now there's 5 more parts that need to be replaced at a similar cost. So I'm going to submit to the council. I would have done it last week, but I didn't have the documents in front of me when I needed to file this report. The replacement of that boiler was on the capital projects list, and it got passed over for fiscal 22. But I think that need is dire. And if that, I don't want to keep spending good money after bad, at least that's my opinion of it. And so I would recommend that at a later date, you consider funding that once you have an opportunity to look at the documents that I will send to you. And feel free to take a look yourselves in the basement of the building because it's quite revealing. Steve was there with Joe Dunn and myself, Bruce Fenney and myself. And the sideline benefit to replacing that is that the removal of that boiler and its predecessor, which is the size of, it's a cube and it's an old coal burning furnace. If those 2 pieces of equipment are removed, then we could use the entire basement of the Council on Aging for record storage. So in addition to the energy efficiency, that record storage would be a huge benefit. So I'm only mentioning it now just to plant the seed in your mind so that you won't be surprised when we advocate for it a little bit later. I don't want to take any more of Steve's thunder because he did provide you with a report. So I'll let him address that if you have questions. We have hired the internal audit position. We don't know, I don't know what you're calling it, inside policy developer or something. But anyway, that work has begun. And I think I have somebody in mind for grant support in the town manager's office starting in September. And lastly, penultimately, I have appointed Ken Hancock to the Historical Commission. Mr. Hancock is a retired health industry consultant. And when he retired from that career, he started a construction company. But he demonstrated in the short time I was with him a real devotion and interest in preservation of town historical buildings and culture and et cetera. So I think he'll be a good addition. I don't want to end the meeting on my report on a negative note, but I do feel compelled to advise that COVID has not left us. I was at a meeting last week with the Health Advisory Board of the school department and our health director. And there's a kind of a raging debate at the moment about the use of masks or the mandating of masks in school once the school session starts I think it's August 31st this year. So we're waiting for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education or the CDC or the governor's office or somebody to make the ultimate decision about masking. Obviously, the kids in grades K through 6 have to wear masks, but the issue revolves around other personnel and whether they should be required to wear masks in the presence of. So that's a to be determined subject. I wish I could say with confidence that East Long Meadow was doing fine, but we're not. Our positivity rate is increasing. Our case numbers are increasing. And it's a subject of some concern. So hopefully it won't rise anywhere near the level of last March, a year ago March, I should say. But we're prepared to deal with whatever circumstances face us, regardless of how difficult they are. So that's it for tonight, and thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Motion to approve the open session minutes from our July 13th, 2021 meeting.
Yes, I move to approve the July 13th, 2021 open session minutes.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Are there any discussions regarding the minutes? Hearing and seeing none. We'll start the roll call with Ralph.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Tom?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
And Connor?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Under communications and correspondence, not sure if the camera was rolling, but Connor is joining us tonight from Oahu. It's probably about 12:30 right now, and I'm sure he'll be eating lunch when we're getting ready to eat dinner, but also on his birthday. So happy birthday from the entire town council and other staff members that are joining us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That being said, it is 6:25, so we're in the guidelines for our public hearing that's scheduled at 6:15. Tonight's public hearing is required for our first reading for a proposed zoning bylaw adding a cottage food operation exemption. I'm gonna have to read this bylaw in. But before we get to that, I'm going to introduce the council. We have Ralph Page here this evening. I'm Mike Kane. To my right, Tom O'Connor, Marilyn Richards, Pat Henry, and Connor O'Shea. And Jeannie, could I have you read the legal notice into the record, please?
Sure. The East Long Meadow Town Council will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, August 10, 2021 at 6:15 p.m. via Zoom webinar for the purpose of amending and clarifying the Town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaws by adding under the Schedule of Uses, Section 3.090, Accessory Uses, new item I, Cottage Food Operation Exemption. Information relating to this proposed bylaw is on file with the town clerk and available for review by the public on the town's website. For the council, Jean Quagliati, Town Clerk, Clerk of the Council.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Welcome.
So our applicant this evening, Planning Board / Russ Denver. Don, do you see Russ in the audience by any chance? And I'm not sure if Don's with us right now.
Yes, sorry, Mike, I was muted. Yep, he's on his way in.
Okay, great, thank you.
I think. Try again.
There you go.
There we go.
Hi, Russ.
Hi, it's like I walked through a door.
There you go. All right, we have audio and we have a picture. Could you give us a brief explanation behind the rationale for the proposed amendment?
Sure, I'll give you a quick history. So we were actually approached by a resident of the town who appeared before the board to essentially establish a small in-house bakery. Apparently, she has a following of family and friends for her cookies. And we did not know exactly how to treat this request. So we put it on hold. We asked Bethany, who is your Director of Planning and Community Development, to do some research. And as it turns out that there is actually within state law, it's referred to as a cottage food industry. There are a number of other communities in Massachusetts that have a zoning for a cottage food industry. The closest to us is the town of Wilbraham. So we liberally borrowed much of Wilbraham's zoning language on this. And it would allow a very small scale, almost referred to as a micro business, to operate this small bakery in-house. It is not a commercial bakery at all, and they would still need to comply with the other provisions of the zoning ordinance. So there would be no customers going to the location. There would be no commercial vehicles allowed at the location. It would require the individual to do their small baking projects and actually deliver the product to their customers. We obviously want that because we don't want residential districts, creating a kind of business activities there. I can also tell you that there is still a requirement for the Board of Health to be involved in all of this. So before they they can begin operations, they need to fill out a food permit application, a plan review application, and a grease trap application. Those all need to be reviewed prior to operation will begin. And like other food establishments, they will have to be inspected twice a year. Councilor Richards, I know, attended one of our meetings, had questions about a definition. We went with the conclusion that we would just use the definition established by the state regulations. So in the event that the state changes the definition, we wouldn't have to come back and amend the town of East Long Meadow zoning requirements or zoning bylaw. So I know John Torsha, another member of the board, I think was going to be coming into this meeting. The discussion was, you know, we're going through some very unusual times with the pandemic. More people are trying to find, you know, new ways to kind of make livings and earn additional income. And we felt that this would have a very minimal, if at all, any impact on the residential zones in the town. So we endorsed it.
All right. Well, thank you for the rationale behind the proposed amendment. We appreciate your time. At this time, I'd like to open up the public hearing for public comment. If anyone is in the audience, before I have Don bring you in, please be ready to state your name and address for the record, please. Don, do you see anyone in the audience?
Well, John Torsha is here. Would you like to bring him in as a member of the planning board?
Sure.
And how about Bethany as well? I think she has indicated she got her hand up, so I think she may have something to add.
Yeah, if you have room and you can bring them in simultaneously, or
I got all the room in the world.
all right.
Hi,
That's great.
John.
Hi, good evening.
Efficiency. Jonathan, you're here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
Seeing that I can hear you and I can see you, we'll start with whatever you have for us.
Yeah, so I'll just echo kind of what Russ said. This did come to our board a number of weeks ago. This is a rule that was, I think, in place in some other local municipalities, Wilbraham, one of our next door neighbors. I think it's just good to be able to make the bylaws flexible to the times. You know, where I think the era of COVID, the era of the information technology that's going on, it just will make it easier for people to conduct their businesses, but without significantly changing residential zones. So this is, I think, a small addition that will have minimal impact, but help those specific residents that are in this type of field making small time food orders.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. Bethany.
Hi, I think Russ and John pretty much covered it. The only thing I'll add is that while the Board of Health and the state do regulate this use, they are concerned about the preparation of the food, who's making it, where it's kept, and how it's packaged. They are not concerned about traffic that it might incur coming to the house. They're not worried about signage outside the house. So this is what this amendment would address.
That's great. Jonathan and Bethany, thank you for the additional information. And Don, do we have anyone in the public that would like to speak?
I don't see any hands up at the moment.
Okay. So at this time, we will close the public input portion of our meeting this evening. And Council now can have the opportunity to speak, and obviously I'll be looking for a motion to continue. Any councilors have any comments? Ralph?
So I have a question. If I read the law correctly, this takes away the opportunity for in-house catering per se. This isn't to allow catering out of a house. This is to allow like the making of brownies where you bring them to a farmer's market or something. I'm correct with that, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Great.
Any other, Pat?
Thank you, Mike. I noticed that that Bethany presented pros and cons. Yay. So we can actually look at some of these. And I noticed that the cons basically is not, the first con is not a real con. It's a pro for adopting it. A real con would be something like if you could no longer bake brownies for your scout troop, or some kind of limitations that people are currently doing now for groups, that this might, because it's now become a bylaw, might impinge on them. So I'm just concerned that the planning board has looked at this in a way that that there are no cons against the normal doing of brownies for book groups or anything like that. And which, anytime you have a new law that's passed, there's always some unanticipated consequences. So I hope they've looked into that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Pat.
And I'd like to just thank Councilor O'Connor for reminding us of the pros and cons requirement.
Welcome.
All right. If there aren't any other, Tom?
Yeah, I have a question. It has to do with something I did not read, but under this condition, is there a special permit that's issued limiting the hours?
Typically, no. This would probably come under site plan waiver. We do discuss hours of operation in the site plan waiver. And occasionally we'll add them onto the site plan waiver decision, but that's not a recorded decision like a special permit.
Okay, and my concern there is if we have a business that's very successful and they operate on a 24-hour clock, there's going to be a lot of activity in a residential area, in a home, maybe close to other residential homes, that they may be emitting a lot of, I'll call it, flavors into the air, and it could become a nuisance, but that will be addressed.
Well, I think that would be addressed through the building inspector and maybe health department if that becomes to be a problem.
Thank you.
Pat?
Thank you, Mike. Councilor O'Connor raises a very good point. I remember the coffee roaster. It used to be at Four Corners, and the surrounding people were just beside themselves over the amount of aroma that came out there. And I had never thought about that in connection with this, but we have had that experience here.
Well, it's really meant for very small micro businesses.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a commercial business kind of, you know, per se. So,
Marilyn?
Thank you, Mike. In attending the planning board's public hearing, I found it interesting, but wasn't surprised when it was referred to as manufacturing. And, you know, we think of hazardous materials and whatnot with manufacturing. However, when you're creating a product in your kitchen, it's manufacturing. The use is no different than what's happening in most kitchens throughout the town. This is one person who's baking with one oven. You know, there's no change in the equipment. It's just addressing a small need, and I think it's a wonderful idea. Thank you.
Thank you. If there aren't any other comments, thank you all for your comments and suggestions, and I'll entertain a motion to continue.
I move we continue the public hearing for a zoning bylaw amendment, adding new item I, cottage food operation exemption, to schedule of uses section 3.090, accessory uses, to September 14, 2021 at 6:15 p.m. for a second reading.
I will second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Marilyn?
Just one comment. Were we to have read into the record the bylaw?
Do you have that bylaw in front of you?
I do.
Could you read it into the record for us?
Absolutely. Okay, this is accessory uses section 3.090, and it's the new item I, cottage food operation exemption. A cottage food operation is allowed as a home occupation subject to all the conditions listed herein under this section 3.090, provided the resident operator is issued and maintains a valid residential kitchen permit from the East Long Meadow Board of Health and complies with the requirements imposed by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health Regulations promulgated at 105 CMR 590.
Any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll roll call vote. Connor,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Marilyn,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
I'm a yes, and Ralph?
Yes.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russ.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Russ,
Russ.
Thank you.
Bethany, John.
Bethany, yeah, and John.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is take, if you look on the second page of our agenda and under old business, C2, I'd like to come out of order and move C2 to continue our hearing. And so if I could have a motion to do that, please.
I move we go out of order to take item C2, continued discussion of authorization of the town of East Long Meadow to participate in the Massachusetts Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program PACE. Take this up out of order to return back to order once we are completed.
Thanks, Pat.
Second.
And with a second, any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Connor,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Marilyn,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
I'm a yes, and Tom?
Yes.
Okay. So that being said, I believe in our audience, Don, do we have Frank here at this time?
Yes.
Could we bring him in when it's convenient, please?
Yes, indeed.
Hi, Frank.
Hello, Mike. Can you hear me?
I want to apologize for our last council meeting that ran so late. And the remedy is obviously we just came out of order and would appreciate anything and everything that you can furnish us with in this evening to describe the whole Assessed Clean Energy Program, otherwise known as PACE.
Well, thank you. The commercial PACE program was voted by the state legislature in 2016. Currently, 45 communities or municipalities in the Commonwealth have adopted PACE legislation for their commercial property owners. PACE is a financing alternative for commercial property owners to finance energy improvements to their building. So boilers, furnaces, HVAC systems, solar panels, these are the type of things that are allowed to be financed with PACE financing. So it's an alternative to paying cash or going to a bank. And the PACE assessment is a betterment. And so that is why the town opt-in vote is needed. So it becomes part of the property owner's tax bill. The financing for PACE is provided by a third-party capital provider. We currently have, I believe, 6 to 8 capital providers that we have reviewed and have approved, and those are the capital providers that we refer property owners to. So the project has to, get financing through a capital provider. The mortgage, if there is a mortgage holder, the mortgage holder must consent to the PACE lien. And once it goes through, the Department of Energy Resources reviews this project to make sure there's a net savings to the property owner versus the cost of the project. Once all of that is documented and approved, it goes to closing. The town's role in the assessor's office is to have the betterment appear. That we will provide the schedule of payments for repayment of the tax base betterment, and the town's role would be to add that to the property owner's tax bill per the schedule that's provided by the capital provider to the town, and then the property owner will begin making those PACE repayments.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions at this point for Frank before we move on with motion to read the entire bylaw, which is, I see Ralph laughing here, but you won't be laughing when you finish reading this. So.
That's correct, but I have a question, Mike. So one of my concerns is on the document I'm about to read, number 5, which is Roman numeral V, it says that the town basically and enforce to the extent required by the agreement, the PACE betterment. So does that mean that we have to enforce if someone doesn't pay their betterment, that we have to go after them?
No, that does not. The capital provider that provided the funding would be responsible for the PACE, collecting the PACE betterment. They would just need to be notified that there's been a delinquency.
So I'm assuming that language is in the agreement then that the town manager would be negotiating and signing.
Yes.
Okay.
The town would not have to go after the property owner, and the town's property tax lien is obviously senior to everything, to the PACE lien, to any mortgage. But you would just need to notify that that there was no collection made.
Okay. Pat?
Thank you, Mike. For clarification, before Ralph reads this, are we reading this so that we are in the process of approving this tonight?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it?
That would be the pleasure of the council. I mean, as proper protocol, we to continue discussion, I'd like a motion in a second, and also to read this document into the record to continue discussion. Ralph, would you go ahead, Pat?
Mike, I only asked that question, I'm sorry, I had to look back to, because the actual agenda says continued discussion of the authorization. And I don't think I was aware that we were actually doing anything more than discussing at this point, but thank you, I understand now.
You're welcome. Ralph?
So Mike, do you want me to read this right from the top, the vote resolution authorizing the town? I skip all the way to the...
I believe what needs to be read in is it says whereas, now, therefore, right under that, it starts with the town council.
So Jeannie's got a comment, but she's muted.
Well, I got confirmation from Pace, and Frank, you can confirm that also that we have to read the whole thing in its entirety.
Yep.
Jeannie, you're killing me.
You missed your chance, Ralph.
Well, yeah, I mean, we need to get the vote back certified by the clerk that the council approved the PACE vote, but I don't know what your internal process is in terms of having to read it. We just need to know that it was that language was approved.
So Mike, I will read it from the top all the way down, and that way there, whether we need to or not, it's been done. So
there you go.
This is a vote or a resolution authorizing the town of East Long Meadow to participate in the Massachusetts Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, PACE, Massachusetts. Whereas pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 23M, as amended, the PACE Act, the Commonwealth has established a commercial sustainable energy program known as the Massachusetts Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, PACE, Massachusetts, to provide a financing mechanism, PACE financing, to private owners of commercial and industrial properties for certain qualifying commercial energy improvements. And whereas pursuant to the PACE Act, PACE Massachusetts is administered by the Massachusetts Development Finance Agency, Mass Development, in consultation with the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources. And whereas under PACE Massachusetts, the owner of the commercial or industrial property benefiting from the improvements, the benefited property, is required to repay the PACE financing through the payment of a betterment assessment, a PACE betterment assessment, placed on such benefited property by the municipality in which the benefited property is located. And whereas in order for an owner of commercial or industrial property to participate in PACE Massachusetts, Section 2 of the PACE Act requires that the municipality in which such property is located must elect to participate in PACE Massachusetts. And whereas the town of East Long Meadow, the municipality, has determined that it is in the best interest of the municipality to participate in PACE Massachusetts as a participating municipality, as provided in the PACE Act, to permit the owners of commercial and industrial properties located in the municipality to access PACE financing for qualifying commercial energy improvements through PACE Massachusetts. Whereas now therefore be it voted and resolved as follows. The town of East Long Meadow, the town council of East Long Meadow hereby approves the municipality participating in PACE Massachusetts pursuant to the PACE Act, and authorizes the town manager to enter into a PACE Massachusetts Municipal Assessment and Assignment Agreement, the agreement, with Mass Development, pursuant to which the municipality will agree to: 1, levy PACE betterment assessments and impose PACE betterment assessment liens on benefited properties located in the municipality, and the amounts determined by Mass Development to be sufficient to repay the PACE financing. 2, assign PACE betterment assessment liens to Mass Development, which Mass Development may in turn assign to the providers of the PACE financing, each a capital provider, as collateral for such PACE financing. 3, include on the property tax bills for the benefited properties the installment payments necessary to repay the PACE betterment assessments in the amounts and at the times as determined by Mass Development. 4, collect and pay over to Mass Development or its designee the PACE betterment assessment installment payments as and when collected. And 5, enforce to the extent required by the agreement the PACE betterment assessments and liens. The agreement to be substantially in the form presented to this meeting, with such changes, modifications, and insertions as the town manager may approve as being in the best interest of the municipality. The collector treasurer of the city or town or other city or town agencies as may be designated in the agreement is authorized to levy such PACE betterment assessments and impose the PACE betterment assessment liens on behalf of the city or town without further authorization by this legislative body. Notwithstanding any other provision of law to the contrary, officers and officials of the municipality, including without limitation, municipal tax assessors and tax collectors, are not personally liable to Mass Development or to any other person for claims or whatever kind of nature under or related to PACE Massachusetts, including without limitation claims for or related to uncollected PACE betterment assessments. Other than fulfillment of the obligations specified in the agreement, the municipality has no liability to the owner of the benefited property or to any capital provider related to the municipality's participation in PACE Massachusetts.
I will second that.
Okay, a motion and a second. discussion, and I would ask Mary, I know I spent some time talking to you about this, and I know you've certainly spent your share of time investigating it. As we read the first part of the motion, it's the town council of the town of East Long Meadow with the approval of the town manager. So I know you're very knowledgeable. Could you give us any extra information on your take on the PACE program?
Thank you, Mike. Only to repeat what I said at last month's meeting, and that is that I view it as an opportunity to be business friendly. We were approached initially by Mass Development as well as 3 or 4 commercial property owners in town about about this enactment of this law back in 2016 and the benefit that it may bestow on those who choose to pursue it. So I saw it as an opportunity to, as I said, be business friendly without imposing any substantial burden on the town. We did vet through the administrative costs. Of course, we may never have an applicant for this, so it may be much ado about nothing, but the establishment of the betterment is really the sole obligation. And I'm not minimizing that because people are busy, but I know it can be managed. And I think it's a goodwill gesture toward those business owners in the community that may want to apply for this financing. That's really all I have to add.
Well, I do remember, I mean, it's a recap of what took place at the last council meeting, and I appreciate it. Pat?
Thank you, Mike. Frank Cannon indicated it's a financing alternative. And as a fiscal conservative, I'm naturally skeptical of any government program that promises to help us do something we can already do without the program. Last week, we looked at the flow chart and we observed that it was a real complicated Rube Goldberg type of presentation. And we're assured by Town Manager Mary that it does not involve any significant effort or liability for the town. Unfortunately, neither at last month's meeting or in the materials submitted for this month's meeting was there any mention of any potential drawbacks or negatives to the program, which is really required by council rules, and for good reason, because we don't have the ability to dive into these things as Bethany and others may have. Councilors just can't be expected to come up with these things on the fly during the meeting. The proponents in the building department, the financial department, the planning department have done the investigation, and they're the content experts, not us. They're telling us they like the plan. But essentially what we're doing is we're putting a construction mortgage through our quarterly tax bills, and I really don't like that idea. Another issue I have with PACE is the inference that the program will pay for energy improvements that the private sector banks won't. If that's true, that would be a scary thought. I know of no bank that won't lend you money if your financials of your project make sense. Will the PACE program be approving risky loans like the banks did 15 years ago just to support the administration's green goals? I hope not. It's also disconcerting that the scheme is structured in such a way that the obligation doesn't show up as a liability on the business's balance sheet, even though it's essentially a secured loan. Proponents say, why not sign on? It won't cost the town offices much of anything, and it's good PR these days to support greenness of any kind. Allegedly, the builders want it too. But as councilors, I believe we have obligations to go beyond the cost of the town and the benefit to the builders and businesses. As citizens of the Commonwealth and municipal leaders in Massachusetts, we also should be helping drive down unnecessary state spending, such as this nice to have, but really not vital program. This program grows the state bureaucracy and provides, I don't see anything that the builders, businesses, and banks can't do on their own today. So I am a no.
Okay. The way I read this, and this motion obviously is phrased much different than any motions we've seen in the past in its lengthy entirety, but I believe it's written in the affirmative. So I'm asking everyone here, do you agree on this before we vote on it? Because we do have a motion on the floor and a second. Tom?
If we're in discussion, I kind of echo some of Pat's comments. I hear what Mary's saying, that there's little overhead to the town, but there's still an overhead. So the town's going to bear the burden of administering this program if and when businesses decide to make use of it, if they do. And if it's going to be in the tax bill and it becomes problematic for, let's say, the commercial business to pay their tax bill, and they're not going to pay their betterment, then the town may not get their tax bill paid. So we may potentially have a problem with receiving revenue if there's additional betterments added on to this. And the concept, I think, is burdensome to the town.
Frank, I would ask, do you have any information to push back against what Councilor O'Connor or Councilor Henry is stating?
Yes, Mike. One of the reasons why PACE would be an alternative is, to Pat's point, a bank would maybe find a commercial business very attractive to lend to, but the appraisal of the building does not allow any additional funding. They are maxed out with the mortgage that they have, but the cash flow of the business is absolutely going great. That would be a case where a bank can't, even though it's a good credit, and PACE might be, in that case, a very attractive alternative. It is not a loan, so if that property owner were to sell the building, the remaining PACE lien is assumed by the next owner. So in terms of any kind of default, all that's in default is the current PACE payment. And as soon as there is not a payment made, we are notified, and we notify the capital provider. So it is their responsibility to work on their PACE lien. And typically the bank that's holding the mortgage would not allow it to get to that point. But I just want to be clear, there are certain alternatives where certain situations where it would be an alternative to a traditional loan for a good credit.
Right. Thanks, Frank. Tom?
Mike, I'm going to go back to something that I echo in many of our meetings, and we've already addressed this twice in our meeting earlier. That goes back to the pros and cons. This is an initiative that's, I don't know, 35 pages long, and with a PowerPoint and spreadsheet that's another 20 pages, and we have no list of pros and cons. That's a rule of the council. That is something that should come from the content knowledge experts who are presenting to us and asking us to do something with a petition or an initiative that they're bringing forward. And we haven't seen that. And I don't like the fact that we haven't seen it. This is not, let's change a manager to a liquor establishment. This is a huge initiative.
Well, in fairness to the applicant, I believe there are pros on the floor. That's part of the exclamation. So what I think you're looking for what are the cons, correct?
I'm looking for both, Mike. I think we need to see a list, a separate sheet, so we don't have to read through all these documentation to find what the pros are and what the cons are. They're the content, they're the knowledge experts. This is their full-time job. They're state employees responsible for administering and marketing this program. They should know what the pros and cons are. We don't. I like to know that.
Okay. I guess at this point, I'd ask, is there any further discussion? So go ahead, Ralph.
Mike, I just wanted to clarify, because I think I left out the first couple of words was I wanted to make a motion to approve and then read everything. So yes, my motion was in the affirmative to approve this as I read it.
Okay, that makes me feel better, because that's the question I just asked our entire council here, because this motion is phrased differently, as we all know, than most motions, and is much more lengthy. So it was phrased in the affirmative, and there is a second on the floor. We're in the discussion phase right now, and if there isn't any further discussion, we all know what our options are. The motion could be rescinded, or we vote, and a new motion could be put on the floor, or we vote on this motion. Correct, Pat?
Yes, Mike.
Okay. So is there any further discussion? Ralph?
Mike, I have one question for Frank, if you don't mind.
Not
You said other communities have done this. Have you heard any negative from the communities that have already done it? Has there been any drawbacks or any complaints? I wish, this or that.
I think the biggest thing that we have heard back is that it does add to the work of the assessor's office. But it's a one-time, it's a fixed rate payment schedule. So once it's booked in, and I don't work in a tax office, so I don't know. But that's really the only thing we've heard is it is an extra, duty. But someone made the point, I don't know that you're going to see a lot of these. Again, it will only be in certain situations where the property owner feels this is a really good way to do it. But the only negative we've heard is that it is an additional amount of work for the assessor office to do the booking of the assessment. There is no risk to the town. The capital is provided through an outside provider. It's really just the billing.
And Mike, just to follow up, Mary, if I remember right, you had said that you've already talked through the assessors, the collector and everything, and they were comfortable with this program.
Yes, we had 3 or 4 different meetings discussing those issues with Steve, Diane, Don, myself, and representatives of Western Mass Development.
Great, thank you.
And we do have a consultant that does work with the towns to help with the booking of this. They're very familiar with the municipal systems. So we do have a provider that does work to help with the booking of the assessment.
Any further discussion? All right, I believe we're ready to vote. I'll start at the bottom with Connor.
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Pat?
No.
Tom?
No.
And I'm a yes.
Okay.
All right. Frank, thank you for your time and your explanation. We appreciate you coming in, and I apologize for our last council meeting where we weren't able to make the timing work, but thank you again.
No problem at all. Thank you all very much.
Good night,
Thank
Frank.
you.
Bye.
So this puts us back under orders of the day based on the motion on the floor, and under A, licensing matters, we have I'll entertain a motion to approve a one-day liquor license for a swimming pool dedication at Pine Knoll Rec Area on August 20th from 6 to 11.
That falls under mine. So
I believe it does, Tom.
yeah.
A1.
Yep. The motion, I move to approve a one-day liquor license for a swimming pool dedication at Pine Knoll Recreation Area on August 20th, 2021 from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Question, Mike?
Yes, Ralph.
So are they renting the facilities at Pine Knoll, including the pool? And is the pool going to be open? I'm just looking at the first application. It says persons under 21 in attendance. It's not marked yes or no. It's an all alcohol license that we're looking to approve.
Okay, I had quite a bit of discussion today, and I believe I'm going to ask Don Mackey here. Obviously, if Donna is in the audience, because Donna is very up to date on these next two licenses that both pertain to Pine Knoll. Don, do you see Donna in the audience?
She's on her way, Mike.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, Donna.
So this is an invite-only event, and the only children that will be there will be Sue Lang's grandchildren who will be participating in the event. So during the portion where the alcohol will be served, there will be no pool activity. So Friday night, no pool activity. Saturday morning, there will be an event where the old Olympians and I shouldn't say old, sorry, the former swimmers of the Pinewool Swim School will be there, and they will be competing against each other. And then Sue Lang's grandchildren might be swimming during the setup, but once the afternoon events start, then the children will be participating in the program, and the pool will be open as far as there will be lifeguards on deck that will be paid for by Sue and Peg. I'm sorry, not Peg, Jennifer. And that's because anytime a pool is open to the public, we have to have lifeguards on duty. But this will be a dressed event. And let me see. Yeah, during the alcohol portion, the pool will not be open as far as swimming.
Okay.
That's awesome. That answers all of my questions, Mike. I had quite a few and Donna hit on all of them. Thank you.
Well, I want to apologize to everyone that I obviously have much more dialogue with the department heads and our manager. So a lot of times I have the information and I need to be conscious that it's not all there. And I knew we would have Donna tonight, and I'm sure she can answer any and all questions so that everybody has that level of comfort before they vote. Any other questions for Donna? Marilyn?
I just have a question on the application. Both applications have blank server's name and certification. Now, my understanding is it's a requirement for all of our one-day liquor license applications. In discussion with the town clerk, Jeannie, I believe there is one.
Jeannie?
Yes, so the complete packet for both applications has the insurance liability, the caterer's license, and also the copy of the tip certification with the tip server's names. So it wasn't on the application itself, it's in all the supporting documentation for the applications.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, I just have one more question. Most of my questions have been answered, but will there be a town staff member on site since this is town property with use and making use of town buildings and our pool?
I believe that Donna can probably answer that question best.
He's muted.
Muted.
Doggone it. Okay, am I ready? Yes. I will be up there myself as a participant and a representative of the town.
Thanks, Donna. Okay, Pat?
Thank you, Mike. My question would be for Donna and maybe for Mary. Is this the first time we've had a liquor license at Pinewool?
Since I've been here, it is. I mean, this is quite the special situation since the Coach Sylvia is the one that created the entire school and built this property and made it possible for us to carry on his legacy. This is very different than anything I've ever experienced.
Thank you.
Again, Donna. Marilyn?
I have to ask this regarding the actual dedication of the swimming pool itself. Is the rec commission involved? Is anyone from the town involved in this process?
Yes, it went before the rec commission, and Nancy Roberts, who has been a big, well, her children were a part of this program, will be the RMB present.
Okay, thank you.
But the rec commission is fully on board with this.
Oh, I understand that. I was just wondering if this was, I realize it's the people that are invited are mostly family and friends, and this is considered a private, but you're talking about the dedication of our pool. And I didn't know if there was involvement with the town at all.
Okay. Pat, I saw your hand up, I believe.
Thank you, Mike. No, I'm all set.
You are, okay. If there is no further discussion, and I don't see any, we'll roll call vote. And again, I'll start on my screen here to the left with Connor,
Yes.
Marilyn,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Moving to A2, motion to approve a license for a similar situation at a different date and time, please.
I move to approve a one-day liquor license for a swimming pool dedication at Pinewool Recreation Area on August 21st, 2021, from 5 to 8 p.m.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. I'm only going to guess there's no further discussion. Seeing the only difference is the date and time. And I don't believe I see any, so we'll roll call vote again with Connor,
Yes.
Marilyn,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
I'm a yes, Ralph,
Yes.
and Tom.
Yes.
Okay. A3, motion to approve a one-day liquor license for a wedding.
I move to approve a one-day liquor license for a wedding reception at St. Paul the Apostle on August 28th, 2021, from 5 to 11:30 p.m.
A second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Pat. Discussion? Roll call vote. Connor,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Marilyn,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Thank you. Motion to approve another one-day liquor license for a Jack and Jill under A4.
I move to approve a one-day liquor license for Jack and Jill at the Masonic Temple on August 28th, 2021, from 5 to 11 p.m.
Second.
Motion in a second. And we'll take a look here. It's discussion, please. Hearing and seeing none. Ralph,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Tom,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Marilyn,
Yes.
and Connor.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's see. It looks like, are we on A6?
A5.
I mean, 5, okay. That's Pat again. Motion for a one-day license for a wedding reception again, Pat.
No, Marilyn.
Okay, things are switched around.
Oh.
We'll get it done.
Okay, yep.
Okay. I will move to approve a one-day liquor license for a wedding reception at the Norcross House on September 5, 2021, from 2 to 8 p.m.
I will second that.
Thank you both. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Connor,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Marilyn,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
I'm a yes, and Ralph.
Yes.
Okay, A6, final motion to approve an annual renewal fee for a farmer brewery, please.
Yeah. I move to approve an annual renewal fee of amount to be determined for a farmer brewery pouring permit.
Right.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and I'll start the discussion with, I see your hand up as well, Ralph. I have had conversations, as I stated earlier, with Mary and Kathy and other members of our licensing committee. Are we comfortable with inserting a fee in there at this time? Ralph?
So Mike, I don't believe we can. Under the charter, Article 2, Section 7, a bylaw is required for any fees. So we have to do any fees that we're going to charge through a bylaw, and a bylaw will need to go through a public hearing process.
All right, I understand what Ralph is talking about because this license is different than any other license that is currently out there. So I'm looking to hopefully not delay the opening of this business. I figured that whatever fee, can we incorporate a fee prior to having the bylaw in place. So I'm open to suggestions. Is there any reason we can't do that? Pat?
Mike, I think the state is superimposing their will on us by allowing them to open, whether or not we charge them a fee, and asking us to give them a license. So I think they won't be held up by any, in my opinion, anything we do to hold it up will just be a matter of, should we add this to the bylaw, or do we even need to amend the bylaw if this, well, the pouring permit bylaw needs to be added to it, but I don't think it makes a difference because they will be able to open anyway.
Okay, so we will leave the fee there, and I will just make a comment if you agree on that. It's not going to exceed any other licensing fee. And I would tend to believe that the opinion of the council would be to prorate it based on when they actually open for that fiscal year. That being said, is that how everyone else feels? Good, Tom?
Mike, I would agree that we probably would need to look at prorating it since it's towards the end of the licensing period. From the information that Jeannie was good enough to reach out and locate for us, it appears that other municipalities are using their on-site pouring. I think they're calling it wine and malt on premise. And we already have a fee for that we can tentatively or put in, and that's $1,000.
So what I was proposing to say is that would be the maximum. Okay,
right.
So we would cap it at that, and then we'll let the LLA do its due diligence as a subcommittee, but it would not exceed that, and the fee would be prorated based on the date that they open.
Right, off the $1,000.
Does that make sense to everyone? Okay,
Sure.
It protects them, knowing that we're not going to come back with some ludicrous number, so it won't exceed any other fee. So I don't know, do we want to I think we should probably rephrase the motion.
Yes.
So, Tom, you read the motion. Would you be comfortable with rescinding that motion?
Sure, I'll rescind the motion.
Okay, and Ralph, did you second it?
I second it. I'll rescind my second.
Okay, thank you. Now we can work on a motion that we're all comfortable with. Who wants to take a stab at it? Pat?
I move to approve an annual renewal fee not to exceed $1,000 for a farmer brewery pouring permit.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
So, Mike,
Ralph?
I'm going to jump in again. The problem is we're approving a fee. Again, we can't do that without a bylaw. I would suggest that we recommend a fee that will be approved once a bylaw is created. It's just one of those that, I mean, maybe it's cutting hairs or whatever. I know we need to come up with a price for it for them. But I also know going forwards, it's our duty as a town council to look at all fees in town. That's why I asked Mary to have the departments put them together, to create a fee schedule in the future that we look at once every couple of years. I don't have a problem with the town council looking at this now and making a suggestion so that when we write a bylaw that we include that amount. I just don't think we can approve setting a fee which would go directly, I mean, it's action requiring a bylaw, establish all fees.
Okay. My interpretation was if we had not to exceed a dollar amount, is that having a fee? I'm trying to get everyone comfortable, but Pat.
Mike, we already have a fee for wine and liquor or malt beverage, or whatever it's called. We already have that fee in existence.
Right.
Why is it not appropriate for us to assign that fee to this operation until such time as we come up with a new bylaw?
Well, I believe that's what Ralph is not comfortable with because you're
No,
assigning.
Well, it was just the way that it was worded. I have no issue with saying that the brewery will go under the malt beverage fee structure until a new fee can be created, a new pouring fee.
Okay.
I'll second what Ralph said.
Okay, I still believe we'd have to rescind the previous motion.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay, so if we can rescind the motion in a second and run with the motion that Ralph is suggesting.
I'll rescind my motion.
And I'll rescind my second.
All right, and Ralph, you want to state the new motion once again?
Again.
So I would move that we, how do I want to say, allow the brewery to operate under our malt beverage licensing fees until a pouring license can be created.
Okay. Second?
Yep, I'll second that.
We have a motion in a second. And I'm just wondering about the date. There's no date on this, I believe, right now. With a little help from Mary, I believe the license should be for 9/4, not 5. I just want to make that part of the record. Mary, would you agree?
No.
Yeah, I'm sorry to confuse the issue. That pertained to a preceding matter in the licensing. But
Right.
So,
Oh, okay. That's why I'm not seeing any dates affiliated.
right, we'll have to, Jeannie and I were going to try to get your attention to revisit that item because the petitioner indicated the date you approved for her one-day license was incorrect. That's a separate matter from what you're talking about now, so I apologize.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that to my attention. And right now, I guess we'll finish up what we started. We do have a motion in a second. Is there any further discussion pertaining to the Farmer Brewery pouring permit? Connor?
Would it be a separate motion for us to say that it should be prorated from the date that they start using that license?
That's what we were discussing. I believe, I don't believe that has to be part of the motion, but what's the pleasure of the council? Pat?
I would say not part of the motion because we're actually going to the licensing commission to make that decision.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Marilyn?
I just want to go on record that we currently assess $1,000 for wine and malt, and I think that's a little bit too steep for this operation. And so I hope that's taken into consideration when you make a determination going forward.
I'm sure that, yeah, the LLA will address the total amount of fee and the proration portion of it when they work through it. But this will at least give them their opportunity to plan on opening, and they will be properly licensed.
Perfect. Thank
Any
you.
other discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Ralph?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Connor?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, so everything under the order of days, order of the days has been completed. And if we can repair, I'm going to defer to Jeannie so that we can straighten these dates out on that. I believe it's under
5.
Under order days, A5, correct, from Deborah Ash?
Right. The wrong date was put on the application, so that vote needs to be amended to September 4th instead of September 5th.
Stand by one here. So it should be 9/4, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So how about we revisit 5 and rescind the motion in the second, or can we? Or are we comfortable just amending the date?
I'll rescind my motion and then just read it over correctly.
Okay, that's what I think is best. And the second came from?
Ralph,
I will rescind my second then.
Okay, so Marilyn, you can reread, right?
exactly. I move to approve a one-day liquor license for a wedding reception at the Norcross House on September 4, 2021, from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m.
I will second that motion.
Okay, motion and second on the floor. Discussion?
The only thing is that the application has to be corrected. I don't know if we can do that or whether we have to get a new one. That's all.
Jeannie, I'm sure will, go ahead, Jeannie.
I just did it.
Good girl.
Okay, we'll roll call vote. Connor?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
I'm a yes. And Ralph?
Yes.
All right, back on schedule here. Okay, so moving right along here under financial matters, approval of the Community Preservation Committee's application for a playground at Pine Knoll Recreation Area in the amount of $180,000. I would ask Don if you could have Jonathan come forward, please.
Sir, on his way.
And before Jonathan starts, Tom, do you want to read that motion for us?
No, it's Connor.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm working off documents that are just a little bit older, but we're talking about B1, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, thank you.
Sure. So I move to approve the Community Preservation Committee's application for a playground at the Pine Knoll Recreation Area in the amount of $180,000, $50,000 to come from the undesignated account, and $130,000 to come from the open space and recreation account.
I'll second that.
Okay. So Connor and Marilyn, motion and a second discussion. And as you know, we have Jonathan standing by. So we'll open the floor for first questions. Ralph.
Jonathan, I didn't notice in the application, $180,000 for a playscape is a lot of money. Has any grants been applied for? I know we've done an open space and rec plan, and the reason we did that is so that we can apply for grants for stuff exactly like this.
So good evening, everyone, again. But to my knowledge, there has not been any grants that have been applied to. The primary reason why we're bringing this forward, my hope is that CPC could support the basic creation of sort of a starter off playground. So the 180 represents sort of a maximum. I don't think that, looking through some of the quotes that are available to you all, that it'll reach anywhere near that. And speaking with the applicant, I think it would be in the committee's best interest and the community's best interest to start a much smaller scaled playground effort rather than something that's very expensive, and then perhaps add-ons could come along later through grant opportunities, which we would support.
Marilyn.
I'm struggling with this because I really do support a playground area like this for our kiddos. My question is, how shovel ready would this project be? I mean, generally the money goes to PCP. A PCP has their applications and they have quotes. And as soon as they get the award, they put shovel in the ground. And historically, we have approved money through CPC for recreation projects. And then it's been rescinded because the money has sat there and wasn't used. The most recent one was the architectural study for Heritage Park. We have Heritage Park out there. CPC paid $25,000 for Heritage Park. And I think, that's a project that needs to happen too. So I don't know where we are with the priorities of these projects. And I'm sort of hesitant to support tying up $180,000 when we don't even know where it's going to go. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's what I'm reading here. A definitive location has yet to be picked in Pine Knoll. When this came before the council at our last meeting, when it was on the agenda, I had heard that there was some issue with the DPW and where this could even be located. I just think these things need to be worked out before you come to us. I'd like to hear what others have to say.
Sure. So it's during the course since that point in time in April, I had the opportunity to sit down with both the applicant, who I think is in the audience, and then Donna Prather of the rec department. So there are kind of two locations that were thought of. I believe they're leaning towards one that would be, if you're aware of kind of the detail of Pine Knoll, where the volleyball nets used to be. So the idea of sort of making sure that land is ready for a playground, I've been told would cost very little resources. And the applicant, along with the rec committee, had offered to dedicate their time and resources privately to making sure that that area would be ready. So if this is approved, there would be, I think, a shovel and ready type kind of drive on behalf of the applicant and the rec committee, because for them, this is, at least from what I gathered from them, a high priority of them. And going through, you know, this went through the process, this went through an unusually long process. That's why some of the quotes might be a little bit outdated. So the exact price point isn't known, which is why I wanted to keep it at the 180 just in case. But again, I expect it to be considerably lower than that. I think back in April, back in March, the project may not have been ready, whereas now I feel pretty comfortable that all the parties involved would be kind of ready to go. And this has the support of both the rec department and the rec committee, which sort of would be overseeing this, being that this is a rec department area.
Connor?
Yeah, two comments. Thank you, Mike. The first is, and Kathy, I think, had reminded us, and something that came out of the master plan was there was a lot of discussion from folks in the community about making sure that anything that we do going forward is accessible to not only all members of the public, but especially those with disabilities or other needs. And I'm not quite sure that this proposal yet really answers or addresses those types of needs or questions from the community. And then the second is something that I always struggle with Pine Knoll, and I certainly like it and went to it as a kid, but I mean, the application and some of the supporting documents make it seem like it's intended to help the kids that are going there for camp during the day, which is great. But if we charge those people money to go there for camp, I always struggle with the town always having to continue to provide its own funds on top of what funds are being paid to send your kid there for a week. Like, why aren't those funds also able to support continuous development of the property to support those types of camp activities? Especially if there are other projects that could be considered elsewhere in town that would have an impact on everyone, not just a subset.
To my knowledge, I believe Pine Knoll is open to the public on a regular basis when there isn't events taking place. At least that's what we were told at the committee level. So looking at, you know, a lot of CPC projects, we like to have very large populations served, and particularly considering this is a larger amount of money, there needs to be a large population served. So you would not only have those camp kids, but I believe there's been, you know, there's many other events that are going on there at the same time. And I believe people are allowed to, you know, go up there on an evening or something like that, though I haven't been to Pine Knoll in quite some time since I was a kid, so.
Okay. Pat?
Thank you, Mike. I have a question and then a couple of comments. I believe that Pine Knoll is open to the public, as Jonathan has stated, but that includes people in 16 acres. Am I not right?
I believe so. I'm not sure definitively. But I believe it's it serves other, you know, neighboring communities such as Springfield. That might have to be a question maybe for Donna or somebody else who is involved.
Well, because it's actually in Springfield. So I appreciate, I want to start off by appreciating that Jonathan has listed the pros and cons. And that's very valuable. And one of the cons that several of the cons he mentioned don't bother me, because I don't think the council should be micromanaging when is it going to start, or why it, where's the location exactly going to be. I think we have it. That's why we have a CPC to do that, and the other people, the professionals that work with them. But the one that does bother me is that have been a lot of projects done there, and we need projects done in other areas of the community as well. And I'm just afraid that this, as Councilor O'Shea mentioned before, might inure to the benefits more of the campers and perhaps of the 16 acres residents than the rest of the town. I really would like, I see this as a negative. There should be something like this in a different area, more central to the town. Thank you.
Okay. Ralph.
So Jonathan, I know you said the 180,000 would be a maximum. As I'm going through some of the estimates and all, some of them are well over the 180,000. And part of my concern is, as we all know, in the last year, everything has jumped in cost exponential. And my concern is at this time, you're going to get half as much of a playground for the 180,000 that you normally would. I mean, I know building materials are up, everything's up. So I think the 180,000, you will probably end up spending it all and getting the starter set that you were talking about.
Yeah, I know that some of the those older quotes did. I think one of them ran to 195, though some of them I think added up different editions. So I still feel confident that it would be considerably lower than the 180. But again, I'm not an expert on where the prices are. It's also possible that we don't start this immediately, but there will likely be, I'm sure, some delay in just starting to implement it. So the actual purchase of this playground may not happen immediately. So, of course, those prices could potentially fall back. Prices are constantly going up and down potentially.
Tom?
Jonathan, the current balances that exist in those two funds, can you tell us what they are?
Sure. I have, I don't have up to date, as of very recent. The most recent is from February of this year. So undesignated has about $738,000. I'm rounding up. And the open space and rec, after two projects have been paid for, we're at about $265,000. That does not include the monies that will be going towards the high school, the resurfacing of the high school track. So we generally, I still think, have a pretty healthy amount of the budget. Over the last 2-year period, we've had a very small number of applications. So we've only had a few $1,000s come out of it. Of course, that would change with the high school track. But even then, we would still have a considerable amount of funds, and the funds are constantly being repopulated on an annual basis.
Marilyn?
Has there been any additional discussion about Heritage Park recently?
So I know there's been some
Jonathan,
internal
I'm sorry.
discussions.
Well,
Yeah, I know. So
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No. Okay. I'm sorry. The power technology. I know there's been some internal discussions going on. And I think that is a long-term plan. And now that the master plan has been developed, I think there might be some movement more towards it in the future. That would be another area that, the CPC would probably support and have supported in the past. But also making sure that, if the CPC will be supporting future projects, they're making sure that, we would have that shovel ready type of project and not sort of give the funds and, we wait a while, and it perhaps doesn't end up happening. Whereas this project, that would not be the case.
Thank you.
Ralph?
Steve had his hand up with regards to, I believe, updating us currently on the amount of funds in this. Can you update us?
Derek, yes, I can. The open space after netting out the track is at 143,906. The undesignated is at 863,037.
What was the last number, Steve?
The undesignated fund balance for the CPC is the
Yes.
863,037.76.
And Steve, when's the next round from the state usually go in? Is it October, November, something like that?
I believe it's around there. I'm not positive, but I believe it's around October or November. Once the state finalizes it, they'll send it to us.
Okay. And then Mike, I just have one more follow-up, and this one's for Mary. As town manager, you are in charge of town properties. I would like to hear what your thoughts are with regards to the playscape at Pinewool. I know recently we've spent $800 and something thousand on the pool up there. I'd like your thoughts on it.
Well, having spent the afternoon with Tom Kay, and he's in the audience, after you hear from me, you might want to hear from him because he's got some passionate thoughts about the playscape there. Initially, I was opposed to it. I thought $180,000 for a playscape was just too much money. Then I kind of backpedaled and thought, well, it's up to the CPC. It's not my decision to make in terms of the spending, although I guess I'll retain the right to offer an opinion. My concerns with the present project as it's presented to you tonight are the development, the grading, placement, if it is in fact at Pine Knoll. I'm not sure that I can buy into the volunteer aspect of volunteering DPW services in one respect, or volunteers to grade the land and make sure that whatever playscape is purchased is properly situated safely. So I have some reservations there, and I would echo some of the costs questions that you, Ralph, raised in terms of the exponential rise in some cost of materials and so forth over the last 12 to 18 months. But I think Jonathan's effort to cap it at 180 is a good faith effort to address that. So, I guess at best I'd call myself ambivalent about it. I do recognize and I respect Tom Kay's position, the Recreation Commission position about the service to the community. There's 300 to 400 to 500 kids that use that playground every year. And Tom has the figures at his fingertips. I don't. The fact that it might attract some people from a neighboring community gives me no pause whatsoever. I think that if East Long Meadow wants to be a welcoming community, that's a good thing. So I don't have any reservations on that score, but I am a little bit concerned about the primarily the grading and the leveling of the land and the placement, if in fact it's determined to be appropriate for Pine Knoll. And I think your other point about grants should be investigated too, but I think I understood John Torsha to represent that the 180 was a max and that those other alternatives could be pursued and they would serve to lessen the exposure from CPC if obtained. So those are my thoughts for now.
Marilyn?
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. I appreciated hearing what you had to say. I also am thinking about not so much the 180,000, but where it's going to be located, whether they find the right site on Pine Knoll or not. The camp is not, Pine Knoll is not open year round. I understand it's closed at a certain point. It's also a location that's accessible in many cases by vehicle only, in terms of it's in Springfield, it's not in East Long Meadow, or the access is. I was driving down Maple Court and I came upon the tables that we have put up in the planters and how beautiful that area is. And I drive down there more than once just to look at it because it's just so neat. And I'm thinking, how is that a place where we could possibly put a playground that's more visible? It's more visible so that we don't have to deal with a lot of perhaps vandalism, that people can use it. Even in the winter, when it's a nice winter sunny day, the kids can use it. Pine Knoll isn't going to get, I don't think, year-round use. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I understand it's closed during the winter months. So those are my thoughts. It's not that I'm against the playground. I'm thinking about what's the best use for our money and what's the best use for our people. And is that the best location? And I'm not convinced at this point.
Honor?
Thank you, Mike. I also agree with those comments there from Marilyn. And I'm also just thinking, I like the idea of a playground, but what other like long-term financial obligation would this put on the town? Because I thought there was also some discussion about the existing playground at Heritage Park too, that, you know, when I was a kid, it was redone, and now there was discussion that there's time to do stuff to it again. So it's not just us spending $180,000 tomorrow. Are we going to have to do this again 10 years from now because it's going to be in a broken down state? So I think we need to consider the obligation of the town on that front.
Okay. Ralph, if you can hold just for 1 second, I just want to, everyone's aware that Counselor Hill is having communication problems from her current location, but she did send me her thoughts on this particular subject matter. And her comments are, the submittals are over a year old and would like updated cost projections. Is the playground all inclusive, which pertains to ADA compliant and has components for children that are physically challenged. So again, those are coming from Counselor Hill, and I felt that I wanted her comments represented. Ralph?
Actually, I think Jonathan wanted to elaborate on those questions first before I ask, if that's okay, Mike.
Sure.
Yeah, I know the question of ADA compliance was up earlier, and then just from Counselor Hill, I can say that, you know, I believe a lot of this equipment probably already has ADA compliance within it. I'm not an expert at designing playgrounds, but from the standpoint of the CPC, as we would hypothetically do oversight over this project, that would be one thing that I would want to look for, making sure it's ADA compliant and making sure we could maybe make some of the different playground sets inclusive, because this would be served a large population there at Pinewool.
Okay. Thank you. Ralph?
Okay, my question, I think it's to Steve. He may have the answer. With regards to approval of this, if we decide to approve it, can we make the approval contingent upon applications, grant applications, or is it simply a yes or no? Can we say we would approve up to 180,000 as long as you apply for at least 3 grants, not get them, at least 3 grants are applied for?
It's my understanding that you're going to approve for the way it's presented right now, up to 180,000, whether they apply or not. You could cap it at the 180. So if it came in at 200, they'd have to find the balance of it through grants. You can strongly suggest to the CPC to apply for the grants, but I don't think we have the authority to say you can do this contingent on this. I think you either have to do it or deny it.
Okay, and Mike, just to follow up, the reason I ask is because when the school came in front of CPC with regards to the playgrounds for the school, that was one of my questions was any grants applied for? And I was told, no, that'll happen next time. And now we have another playscape coming in. Granted, this is through the rec department, And again, no grants. I mean, we spent a lot of time on the open space and rec plan. And one of the main reasons for doing that is then it's logged with the state so that we can apply for grants. And I think that's the whole purpose. I think our council has looked, we just funded a position which will, look for grants and do grant writing. And I mean, granted, it's down the road a little bit, but there's a lot of money out there available, and I have a hard time. 180,000 is a lot of money.
Okay. I did want to ask Don if there's anyone in the audience pertaining to CPC, rec department, or anything else that might be raising their hand at this point in time.
Yes, Mike, Tom Kay has had his hand up for some time.
Could we please invite him in?
Yes, certainly.
Tom?
Good evening.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Fantastic.
I'm sure you've been listening to the comments and dialogue that's been taking place, and your hand up in the audience, wanted to recognize you're out there, and whatever information that you might have that might shed some light on this subject matter.
Yeah, actually, Donna Prather and myself put together a presentation to add color to some of the questions in hand. All right. One about the topography, the location. Also, I think it was Councilor O'Shea who had a question about ADA compliance. In the quotes that were submitted in the packet, there are ADA equipment. All right. And just going through this process multiple times, we submitted 3 quotes, one for 141,000 and change, one for 181,000 and change, and another one for 192,000 and change. We came to the $180,000 because we wanted to keep it within sight. So we submitted 3 quotes, and part of the presentation that we'd like to present to you is to give it color, because equipment's interchangeable. Like, for example, a canopy that was proposed in one of the budgets, in one of the proposals, was $57,000. We don't possibly need a canopy, right? But we want to be thorough. I think maybe we were too thorough in this process because we submitted 3 quotes. It has specific line items, like in regards to ADA equipment and everything of the such. I also want to point out, this not only serves campers to the tune of 160 campers a week for 9 weeks. It also serves, this facility serves the swimmers that are up there all summer, that we're doing the pool dedication, beautiful dedication. We're also, serves the T-ballers. It serves the recreation soccer program for little ones in the spring and the fall. So is the facility shut down in the winter? Yes, but most facilities are like our baseball diamond, or even our track is not open during the winter months. So if I can answer any more questions, please feel free, because Jeannie, I think you have the presentation that I wanted to present to everybody to provide color in the location, some of the equipment, and I can point out what the cost would be on a specific equipment. That was part of the package that was submitted back in March of 2020.
Yeah, just to go off of Tom's point, I think it's sort of an a la carte. So there's going to be within this project or application a lot of different possibilities. So, I think the committee feels this way, and as speaking to Tom earlier about this, that we don't want to, do some type of outrageous purchase especially when we're considering CPC money. But, you know, this being outside, this being a recreational activity, this is a textbook, you know, definition, application for the CPC. You know, it checks off a number of boxes. You know, there's feasibility within it. It meets, you know, a number of populations, a number of needs. You know, there's different camps and things that are going on. And it protects, you know, will protect or enhance unused recreation space. So one of the space that is one of the spaces that's considered is where the old volleyball nets are. So we are going to have a lot of authority in making sure that some of these concerns are met. So looking at grants, making sure things are ADA compliant, and making sure that we don't reach that maximum. We try to bring it down and save as much while still giving them a decent quality playground for these kids to play. So I can say that myself and this committee would be very involved in this process, just like we are with some of the other projects that have come before you recently.
Thanks, Jonathan. Pat?
Thank you, Mike. Point of clarification, I think we all have received all those quotations and all that color that Tom Kay is mentioning. And I know I've reviewed it on several occasions. I'm not sure if it's the latest and the greatest, but is that the same thing we're talking about, or did Tom give Jeannie something additional?
Right.
Jeannie?
So the supporting document that you received, the last 8 pages of the presentation that Tom's talking about.
Okay.
The last 8 pages of the supporting document.
Yeah. So we've all gotten that, right?
Yes.
Yes. Any other questions for Tom or Jonathan? Marilyn?
I was wondering if the council might consider possibly postponing a vote until we have some additional information. Ralph is looking for some attempt at trying to get some grant money. You know, we're curious to know where this is going to be located. I know that it's sort of frustrating to the powers that be. However, I'd like to ask what's happening. Is Heritage Park off the table? Is this now the priority for the Rec Commission with respect to CPC funds going forward? I was under the impression that there was a vote taken that Heritage was the priority for the Rec Commission. So you know, there's a lot of answers or questions that need answers. And so rather than vote no, I would rather postpone a vote if we can do that.
Connor?
And one other potential question, since Mary had enlightened us that she might be hesitant to volunteering the DPW services for like site work and leveling the ground and so forth. A lot of those quotes said that they explicitly exclude any sort of site work and preparation aside from installing the equipment. So what type of expense would that incur? Was that going to blow it way beyond that $180,000 to even do a playground there?
To be determined.
I think you're, ultimately talking about, you know, clearing a fairly small strip of land. I'm, you know, not an expert at that, but I think if there could be perhaps some creative use of rec department resources or private resources that could get kind of that last hump so that it can be installed there.
Okay. Tom Kay?
Yeah, the actual presentation actually shows you the location of where the playground would go. It actually sits on an old volleyball court that's sand and it's all level. Very little earth moving would need to happen. And I really wish I'd have the opportunity to go through the PowerPoint that was created specifically for this for you.
I would just add, Marilyn, I understand where you're coming from. We do have options here. And certainly me listening in sounds like that there's still some unanswered questions, but we might want to get a little bit more comfortable with certain subject matters. And I can certainly say that that is the feeling of Counselor Hill, that has made every attempt she could to be at this meeting. So if we were going to go on the suggestion that Marilyn recommended, the motion was made by Connor and seconded by Marilyn. So if there's no further discussion, we either need to vote or rescind that motion and come back with another option.
So Mike, for clarification, if I may.
Yeah.
So Jonathan, what you're looking for is $180,000. And then between the rec committee and the CPC, you're going to go through and pick and choose what type of play set that you actually want to build. It may not match what one of these estimates are because you're looking to keep the cost down.
Yes.
Is that more accurate? So
yes, because
will
we'll
it be-
ultimately have the final say in how much money, as some of the other projects that have come through, I've been signing off specifically on specific amounts. So, when I say it tonight, that's what I intend to do with this project, trying to bring down as best as we can while still making it a quality playground, and then making the effort to, I think, plug in these concerns that I think could get addressed fairly quickly and with some cooperation with the parties involved.
So in essence, we would be approving an amount not to exceed $180,000 as outlined by the CPC.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from the council at this point? So we do have Pat?
Just to reiterate, there's a motion on the floor.
Correct. That's where I was going. We have a motion on the floor. The motion's in the affirmative. And a lot of times we put these motions out there, obviously, to open up a dialogue for discussion. So we're either going to vote on the motion, or the motion would have to be rescinded and another motion put on the floor. Marilyn?
As we struggle with this, I've put out there twice, the issue about Heritage Park, no one has responded. Is that no longer a priority?
I'll jump on that. I apologize. I know that has been a priority in the past by the rec department. I know right now, presently, this is, I think, a higher priority, just because Heritage is more of a kind of a long-term project or effort that I think will take a number of years, whereas this is sort of a scaled down, very specific project. But I think there is still going to be, hopefully soon, perhaps some development on Heritage Park. We've, through that $25,000 that we gave to a architectural study, and then we gave some money, which was later withdrawn, about looking into more architectural designs. We stand in support of it, but at least from what I learned, definitely from that experience, I want to see something more concrete before we endorse it, and that could potentially take some time. I don't know really where those talks are, but this is a more realistic thing that is shovel ready and kind of available to do in a matter of weeks.
Okay. Tom K.
Yeah, Heritage is still a priority of recreation. It's actually on a 10-year plan across the board for improvement for the town. So yes, it is a priority of recreation. But like just explained by Jonathan, this is a shovel-ready job that will improve the community from a recreation standpoint in our estimate. One is long-term, one is short-term.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we have a motion on the floor, and we'll roll call vote at this time. And we'll start down in the corner with Connor.
No.
Marilyn?
No.
Pat?
No.
Ralph? I'll try Tom O'Connor.
No.
I'm a no at this time. Ralph?
No.
All right. Thank you all for your time and your efforts.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Continuing along under financial matters, I will accept the motion for Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A. Not sure who has that motion. B2, please.
That would be me. I move to approve the donation of $8,500 by Dr. Kevin Coughlin to be expended by the DPW.
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion. Ralph.
So this donation occurred back, I believe it was 2016, when I was the chairman of the planning board. And in lieu of a traffic study, Dr. Coughlin made a donation of $8,500 to be expended by the DPW for improvements along North Main Street. Our concern was the traffic on North Main Street. I believe this goes hand in hand right now with the grant that we just found out about for North Main Street. I brought it to Steve's attention that this money was probably still available somewhere in the town and that we should combine it. I think this is great. I think maybe as the initial process, this will help some. And I think it was a good way for the planning board, where a traffic study would have been completely useless, to get some benefit out of it.
Thanks. Any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Ralph?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Tom?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Connor?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
And I believe I got everyone. My screen just jumped on me. Did I leave anyone out? I guess everyone had the opportunity to vote. My screen jumped around, so I apologize. So the motion passes. The next subject matter is estimated turn-backs, and I use the word estimated. I just want to remind everyone that the information that Steve's about to give us, is contingent upon an audit and then being certified. But that being said, Steve, what do you have for us?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. As we've tried to do is to keep the council informed throughout the year-end process. Just know, so you know where we are. Today is good news, I think. And to echo Mary, a large portion of this is on the department heads and their staffs who worked hard during a pandemic to not only keep core services going, but to have minimal impact on those core services. And not enough can be said about that in my mind. But to that point, we're right now looking at an estimate of roughly $2.6 million being turned back. That's approximately a little over 4% of the budget. And that will be flowed down into free cash once it's certified. It's part of the calculation they use. And I think we're in good shape because of that. So I'd just like to congratulate the department heads again about that.
Thanks, Steve. Anyone have any questions for Steve at this time? Pat?
Well, a comment. I think this is huge, and it's not really just for Steve, but it's for Mary and the whole and everyone that worked as hard as they did to recover this money, to keep from spending it all. I would, however, make one comment, seeing $150,000 left over in the highway department. And I know they can't spend it without our approval, but I would love to have seen that somehow spent on the roads, which I raised before. And I just think that that's probably not a place where I'd want to save money as the highway.
Well, on that subject matter, without elaborating on it, the DPW was successful, and I received a letter today that I shared with Mary on a grant that the DPW obtained. And Steve, you might want to touch on that on a base, but that, I believe, was that north of $8 million for the work on North Main Street.
They received grant for North Main Street.
So that will certainly help. And that North Main Street, Route 83, whatever we want to clarify it as, is certainly a main artery running through the town. So that was great news, and happy to share that with everyone. Under old business, Pat, recommendation of the Town Council Bylaw Review Committee for the adoption of Stretch Energy Code. What do you have for us?
Yes, at the last council meeting, the council voted to refer the question of adopting the Stretch Energy Code to the Bylaw Subcommittee. It's not normally what we do, but in this case, the council clearly wanted the subcommittee to make a recommendation whether to adopt it or not. We're not formally submitting that recommendation today because we haven't voted yet on the bylaw language and the placement, and we want to present the whole package at one time. But I wanted to give you a flavor. Our discussion began by noting that the required pros and cons from the planning and building department were not presented at our last meeting. So we had only a statement recommending adoption by Town Manager Mary and Planning Director Bethany, and the marketing materials that were submitted by the state to look at. We also received an email from Kevin Duquette saying the changes from the existing code are so slight and most contractors are already building to the Stretch Energy so their clients can qualify for energy rebates and for grants. So he listed no drawbacks. At our meeting, there were multiple questions which were answered by the two Energy Department representatives who were in attendance. The perceived advantages that we saw, and I mentioned these because they'll be coming before us at the next meeting. It makes new construction more energy efficient. It publicly demonstrates the town's desire to support green energy. No additional cost to the town. Builders like the idea of one code to meet. Applies only to new construction. And we can always rescind if we don't like it, although it's unclear what that might involve. The disadvantages that we came up with during the meeting, even if we do not adopt, nothing prevents builders and clients from agreeing to build to stretch requirements already. There is additional cost involved to build to the stretch code. Taxes on the new home may be slightly higher due to the features required by the stretch code, remembering that the client will have agreed to those, so takes away the right of clients to build to the existing still legal codes. By adopting, we are agreeing to any future enhancements of the code automatically. There's no real financial incentive to the town to adopt stretch energy. In order to get a financial incentive, you have to adopt the entire Green Communities project. And there is a question if it will add cost to our proposed new high school and police department construction should that take place. And I'm really not sure if that's a true con, but that's a good question. So after a great deal of discussion, the subcommittee voted 3-2 to support adoption of the stretch energy, and also voted to request Councilor Page to draft the bylaw based on samples the committee had received and reviewed. And Councilor Page has referred those to me, and I'm looking at them right now, and we'll be sending them out for our next bylaw committee meeting. We intend to review the complete package at our next subcommittee meeting and refer to the overall council at that next meeting.
All right, that sounds great. So I will, you guys will continue with your due diligence, and once you come to an agreement, then somebody can advise myself, and it will appear back on the agenda if that works. Pat?
I just want to be sure if anyone has any questions at this point to give to the committee to vocalize them now or send them by email. Okay. Anybody have questions? Okay, thanks.
I just want to state some statistics, and I believe everyone knows this. I spent some time talking with Kevin Duquette, and most builders are complying with probably 95% of everything in the code. And out of I believe 361 communities, 289 of them have adopted this. But continue with your work. We appreciate everything your committee's doing, and when you're ready, let me know and we'll revisit. So thank you. Next item on the agenda is the town manager performance evaluation. That started with our committee that makes up the evaluation committee, the three members, and I wanted to thank Marilyn and Pat both because, obligations from our chairperson, impaired her a little bit from being able to continue with the process. And I appreciate both of you stepping up and getting everything to me. As we all know, how it works is once all that information is compiled, it comes to myself. It came with approximately 17 suggested goals. And I'm saying this for anybody viewing in that doesn't understand how the process works. It's up to myself to take suggested goals and any other information that I obtain or Mary obtains and sit down and spend some time with our town manager and finalize goals going forward. There were also 10 questions submitted that we all participated in grading how we felt that she complied with those aspects of the evaluation. So in short, her grade, adding everything together, council members' questions and dividing it was 95+% approval. So bottom line, obviously, I don't have to elaborate on this, but that is a stellar evaluation. And I don't think anybody would combat that. I will talk about the goals, and I feel that once these goals that myself and Mary agreed on, we will vote on tonight, the council can vote on to accept the progress that myself and Mary made. I do also want to thank Ralph, because once we got into the 17 subject matters of suggestions, information changes on a daily basis. It becomes old, and there becomes other things that might be more relevant at the time. So we considered everything and what was most important at the time going forward with goals that we felt would best serve the community. So I'm going to mention the 4 goals that myself, Ralph, and Mary kicked around and thought would best serve the community. Goal number 1 would be to work on a process for civil service to exit or decide what's best for the community. So that would be a priority. A second priority or goal would be to pursue opportunities regarding open space properties around town that our town might have an interest in purchasing and, either for redevelopment or to remain as open space. Tonight's conversation that Mary had when we were even talking about the town hall, to me, reverts to technology improvement. All those records downstairs in the basement, some of them starting to float in water and boxes falling over. We're looking for a way to improve technology, which could streamline everything for not only our manager, but the department heads as well. So we felt that was a top priority. And we actually added a 4th, the evaluation subcommittee. We were looking for 3, but there was something else on there that we felt had relevant value, which is ADP, the replacement. And we need a replacement for that. We all understand what that program was about. And I would say that we're, who knows, 80% done, but we still need a solution. I will ask Mary if she can touch on that just a little bit, or on these other goals, and open it up for any discussion before we vote on anything like that. But before I lose my train of thought, there was one more piece that I learned from our last evaluation. Bear with me here. There were optional narratives, and Pat brought this to my attention, and that counselors wrote, and I'm not going to sit here and read the entire document, but there is nothing negative in these optional narratives that were submitted. I'm hearing copies like, that came from you. These weren't narratives from myself. Mary is a fabulous hire. I hope she stays for many years. Mary has done a commendable job as town manager, navigating through innumerable demands of COVID-19 for the betterment of its residents. She indeed is an asset to the community. Mary continues to affirm through her actions that she was the right choice for East Long Meadow. Her self-evaluation touched on snippets of information that only she would know, and it was helpful to read and understand the depth of her commitment to the staff, to her position as town manager in our town. She has done an outstanding job working through this unprecedented year. That and a 95% approval rating, and having these goals in front of me that myself, Ralph, and Mary created will bring closure to it, as I stated earlier, with a vote, if we feel it's appropriate, and to comply with the charter. And at that point in time, I'll ask Mary if you have any comments on the goals that myself and you spent time working on.
No, other than to thank you for giving me the opportunity to have input into what the goals were or will be. As you and I discussed when we were together, not only you and I, but when Ralph was present as well, these goals, in my opinion, they're not achievable independent of third-party assistance. And typically a goal is something that a person can accomplish without depending on others. So for example, the civil service exit strategy, that's a bargaining issue. It has to be negotiated. It's a goal that I readily accept and will pursue, but I can't do it without buy-in from our respective unions. So just want to be clear about that. The pursuit of open spaces, I think some of the conversation tonight about the playground at Pinewool was kind of germane to that. We do have an open space plan now. We do have a master plan now. So we have more guidance available and more resources available. So I'll happily pursue those initiatives as well as I can identify them. The technology, I think it's almost not a goal. It's almost a job responsibility. I certainly feel it's a responsibility to try to streamline and make life easier and more efficient for our hardworking people in town. And the ADP replacement is something that I've tasked Ryan Quimby's department with helping me on. We are still doing payroll processing, like from 18 departments. They upload paper documents every week that go then to payroll. Then payroll has to re-input much of the information that's submitted by each department. I mean, it's so antiquated and time consuming. It's almost painful every other week to watch that process occur. And so I think the time is more than come for us to proceed with that. The difficulty there is, as you know, ADP was a very expensive purchase. We still have a substantial amount of money in our capital account that was unspent on that contract. And Munis, Tyler Technologies, the parent company of Munis, does have some software that we think we can modify and be suitable for town operations. So we're desperately trying to pursue that. But that's the fourth goal, and they're really not in any order of priority to me. They're all very, very important. But I guess if I had to prioritize, I'd put them in reverse order, and I would go 4, 3, 2, 1, because that's how strongly I feel about helping out our operational efficiencies. We'll save so much money in the return on these investments, not only in the monetary sense, but in the engagement of our department heads and staff, and the recognition of the effort that they put in. I think will yield returns that are not quantifiable at the moment. So thank you for the opportunity, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. I know.
And everybody else who gave me such a nice evaluation.
Thanks. The reason I spoke about voting is the last document that I received from the evaluation committee says the subcommittee makes no recommendation as to the appropriateness of any goal. All suggested goals from the attached document that I stated were approximately 17 goals are to be discussed between the council president and the manager during the evaluation. And that's what took place on numerous dates and time. And I actually asked Ralph to sit on that as we narrowed in on it. And the last piece was, and then voted by the council at its next meeting. So that's why I'm asking your pleasure. I'm not sure if the charter dictates we vote on these to accept the goals, but I guess I can ask Pat and Marilyn. Your signatures are at the bottom of this document. So if you feel it's appropriate, we'll vote to accept the items that myself and Mary and Ralph agreed upon. Pat?
Thank you, Mike. Yes, I think the buy-in of the council is really important, because obviously the whole council can't negotiate which goals should be 1 and 2 or 3 and 4 or 4, 3 and 2 and 1. And so it has to be delegated. But I think the council's approval of that gives Mary a track to run on and knows that it's not just the 3 of you, but it's all of us working together.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I read these goals off because I had to start somewhere. There is no priority on 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Right.
Obviously, these targets they're moving targets and they change day by day. And, she's demonstrated that she will work on and prioritize whatever is most important or the resources are available at that point in time. So I'm very comfortable that that will take place. Pat?
So I move the council indicate its approval of these goals and wish Mary the best.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Thank you both. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Ralph?
Yes.
Yes. Tom?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Connor?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Thank you for completing this long process, but it was very thorough. I don't believe there were any I's or T's that weren't complied with. So I'm very pleased, and I'm sure all of you are, including Mary, to put this evaluation behind us. That being said, action items for next meeting. Anybody have anything they want to bring forward? Connor?
I don't know if it's necessarily for our next meeting, but just so we don't lose sight of coming up with that bylaw for the fee for that brewery pouring permit.
Right, and that is, these action items are pertaining to tonight's meeting, so that would comply. We'll keep it on the radar. That being said, there is no executive session tonight. We ran about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. It's 8:32, and I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. We are adjourned at 8:32. Thank you all for your patience and your input. Have a great evening.
You want to vote?
Vote.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
You want to vote? Okay, we're voting.
Yes.
I saw Ralph. I'm a yes. Tom?
Yes.
Marilyn?
I'm tired. Yes.
Yes.
Been a long day. Connor?
Yes.
Good night and enjoy Oahu.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Everyone.